So today, we're going to decode a blueprint for economic collapse that has repeated itself for 400 years. We're going to connect the single most valuable company in all of history to the financial crises you're seeing in the headlines right now. Let's dive in.
Just take a second and look at this number, $7.9 trillion. Now, what if I told you that wasn't a country's GDP or some massive government bailout? What if I told you that was the peak value of a single company adjusted for today's money?
I mean, to really wrap your head around that, the Dutch East India Company, or VOC for short, was worth more than Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, all combined. This wasn't just another company. It was, without a doubt, the most valuable corporation in human history.
So, the real trillion-dollar question is this, right? How could an entity this powerful, this unbelievably wealthy, just completely collapse into bankruptcy and vanish off the face of the earth? Well, the answer holds a lesson that is frankly, chillingly relevant for us today. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get into the incredible story of the VOC. Then, we'll boil its failure down into 3 universal rules. We'll see how those exact same rules are playing out today, and we'll wrap up with a practical guide on what all of this means for you.
So let's jump into part 1, how the world's very first megacorporation went from dominating the entire globe to complete and total bankruptcy.
You have to understand, when the VOC was founded back in 1602, it was a total revolution. It pioneered the world's first IPO, the first initial public offering, which let ordinary people own a piece of the company. But here's the crazy part. The Dutch government gave it sovereign powers. The VOC could literally mint its own money, raise its own army and navy, and even declare war on other countries. It wasn't just a business. It was basically a state within a state.
And for about a century, it was just an unstoppable money machine. But then, by the 1700s, the company was completely rotting from the inside out. It got so bad, in fact, that a popular joke at the time was that VOC actually stood for Vergaan under corruption, which means destroyed by corruption. You see, employees were paid next to nothing, so they ran these massive smuggling operations on the side, stealing profits right out from under the company's nose.
But the fatal decision, the move that sealed their fate, came in the 18th century. As real profits from trade started to dry up, thanks to all the corruption and military spending, the directors in Amsterdam did something truly shocking. They kept paying out massive dividends to their shareholders. How? Simple. They just borrowed money to do it. It was, for all intents and purposes, a Ponzi scheme. They were creating this illusion of fantastic health while they were literally drowning in debt, right up until the end, when the company was dissolved in 1799, completely and utterly bankrupt.
Now here's the thing. The VOC's collapse wasn't some random one-off event. It followed a timeless blueprint for economic disaster, a pattern that we can actually boil down to 3 simple rules.
It's this tragic 3-step dance. First, you destroy your country's ability to actually produce real things of value. Step 2, to cover up that massive problem, you start printing huge amounts of money out of thin air. Why? Well, because it's often the easiest political path. It's a way to avoid making hard decisions, at least in the short term. And then, step 3, inevitably, everyone wakes up and realizes the money is worthless and all trust is completely, totally lost.
Okay, so now let's take that exact pattern from the 18th century and watch how it plays out in today's headlines. We're going to look at the recent crises in Iran, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe.
The link here is it's astonishingly direct. The VOC borrowed money it didn't have to create a totally false sense of prosperity for its shareholders. Today, countries like Iran do pretty much the same thing. Instead of borrowing, though, they just force their central banks to print brand new currency to fund government salaries and these huge public subsidies. It is the exact same logic, just with a more modern tool.
And this all brings us to rule number 1, crush production. Each of these countries took a different path, but they all ended up at the same destination. Iran's production was crippled by international sanctions. Venezuela, which was totally dependent on its oil, saw its entire economy collapse when prices fell, and these disastrous price controls basically shut down all its other industries. And Zimbabwe, while Zimbabwe destroyed its own amazing agricultural sector through chaotic land reforms, turning the breadbasket of Africa into a nation that couldn't even feed itself. So, with production totally destroyed, what do you think they did next? They all turned to rule number 2, print money. And here's what that looks like. In Zimbabwe, inflation hit 231 million% in July of 2008. That's already an insane number. But just 4 months later, it was almost 80 billion%. Prices were literally doubling every 24 hours. The numbers get so big, they just become meaningless. And that right there brings us to the final devastating stage. Rule number 3, lose all trust. And I'm not being metaphorical here. During hyperinflation in Zimbabwe and in Venezuela and in other crises, citizens literally found that it was cheaper to use their own banknotes as toilet paper than to buy actual toilet paper with them. The money had become worthless junk.
So look, this is all pretty scary stuff, but the crucial point is understanding how this happens so that you can see it coming. And that brings us to our final section, your economic survival guide.
The good news is you can spot the warning signs. Watch for a central bank that isn't independent, one that just takes orders directly from politicians. Look for a massive gap between the official government exchange rate for a currency and what that money is actually worth on the street, on the black market. And you should be really wary if a country is consistently spending more than it earns and importing more than it exports, year after year. These are huge, flashing red flags. Now, for governments, the solutions are actually well known, but they're politically painful. It's a bitter pill to swallow. I mean, stopping the money printer, aggressively jacking up interest rates, and cutting wasteful spending. It's tough medicine, which is exactly why so few politicians are ever willing to actually do it. But for you, as an individual citizen, the playbook is pretty clear. You don't want to hold cash, you want to convert it into hard assets like property or gold. You want to diversify into stable foreign currencies if that's an option. And if you know you need to buy something durable, like a car or a major appliance, do it sooner rather than later, because tomorrow it will almost certainly cost a whole lot more. Ultimately, all of this comes down to the very nature of modern money. A fiat currency, whether that's the dollar, the euro, or any other, it isn't backed by gold or anything physical. Its value comes from one thing and one thing only: trust. So the single most important lesson from the VOC all the way to Venezuela is this: true, lasting wealth is never, ever created by a printing press. It comes from productive farms, it comes from innovative factories, and it comes from a skilled population. Everything else is just an illusion.
Which leaves us all with one final question to think about. If trust really is the ultimate currency, who or what has truly earned yours?